Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we go over the Monday morning news shows that we watch so that you don't have to. Sunday morning news shows, did I say that correctly? Yes, right? All right, I said
Yeah.
Sunday morning, not Monday. All right, great, phew. So I'm one of your hosts. I'm Katie Halper.
And I'm Aaron Maté. How's it going, Katie?
Good, you?
I'm good.
And guys, we know that you can't get enough of us in this 1 hour, so we offer you the hottest Monday morning after show ever, and that is at our call-in. And the link to that call-in is in the YouTube description, and that's where you can call in and we take your calls and your comments.
The world's hottest after party at 11 a.m. Eastern time on Monday morning.
True facts. Now, like has been smashed by John Q, and it's up to all of you guys to be useful idiots, to be valuable useful idiots, to be patriotic useful idiots. Do your duty and like this stream.
Do it for the endorphins. Give us endorphins. We need endorphins.
We need endorphins, and you need endorphins because it's thrilling. It is thrilling to be part of the war on Pod Save America, and that's what you're doing when you're supporting us, because we must defeat them on social media. And we've done it in the past.
How angry do those Johns get when they see that we're getting a lot of likes? Oh my God, they are livid.
Yeah,
it ruins their day and it defeats neoliberalism accordingly.
Yeah, so you know what to do, guys. Give us a like to fight the neoliberal right. How you like that? Pretty good. I know it seems like very prepared, but I just came up with that right now.
Brilliant. That's good stuff, Katie.
Yeah.
Well, so this week, a lot of interesting developments going on in the world. We got Dr. Fauci came in for a round of interviews. We're going to hear about that. We're going to hear about Kanye's dinner with Trump and a white supremacist in Mar-a-Lago. That was weird. But up first, what are we doing first?
Well, actually, we're heading off with that.
We're doing that first. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
with the white supremacist buffet.
Yeah.
Which is someone should definitely market that, because that's I'm sure could be very popular. You could offer some really good discounts for that, an early bird special. So should we just see what let's see, should we set up what happened before? Should we let Chuck Todd do the talking? And then we'll tell people about Nick Fuentes, because he's a very interesting guy.
Sure.
All right, so let's have Chuck do it, and he's going to ask someone what people think about this dinner that, as people probably know, the artist formerly known as Kanye had dinner with Donald Trump and Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes is this alt-right guy who's far to the right of most alt-right people. And we're going to learn some stuff about him in a second. But let's hear what was said in this clip from Meet the Press.
Before I let you go, as a member of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, in many cases, is seen as the leader of the party. He was dining with a known white supremacist and certainly somebody who traffics in anti-Semitic rhetoric, referring to Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, and this Nick Fuentes person. I'm just curious, do you think it was a mistake for the former president to do that?
Well, he certainly needs better judgment in who he dines with. I know that he's issued a statement and said he didn't know who those people were, but at any rate, my focus is going to be on investigating the current administration as the next chairman of the House Oversight Committee, and trying to get a handle on the massive amounts of waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal government. And I think that's where the American people want us to be, and that's where Republicans in the majority are going to be focused.
I understand thinking he should have better judgment. I assume you condemn this? Like you would not take a meeting with this person?
I would not take a meeting with that person. No, I wouldn't take a meeting with Kanye West either. But that's my opinion.
All right, so that's kind of a cuckish answer, I would say, in my opinion. That's a couple of cucks. I don't know what we can measure cuckdom in, but 2 cucks up. That's my opinion. He says it's not the most forceful rejection of this dining arrangement. Let's see what Donald Trump had. Well, no, let's tell you guys about Nick Fuentes. I don't know if you know about him, but he presents himself as an Aryan, which is funny because unfortunately for Nick, and I don't know what the deal is. Maybe this is some weird inferiority complex that people like Adolf Hitler have when they don't really fulfill the Aryan stereotype. Maybe if they had blonde hair and blue eyes, they wouldn't be so obsessed with it and so insecure about it. But he is of Mexican descent, which of course is great. That's a great thing. It's just inconvenient when you're claiming to be Aryan. He also is a fan of the Taliban because he thinks that they challenge the liberal secularism of the West. So that thumbs up for the Taliban. And he claims to be an incel. Now, Aaron, do you know what an incel is?
I do. That's like the men who feel they have the right to sex because they haven't been getting any. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. And incel stands for involuntary celibate. Now, I have to say something though, guys. Nick Fuentes was exposed. He claims to be an incel, but it turns out he once kissed a girl.
Okay, and so that makes you not an incel if you've once kissed a girl?
No, he's a volcel. It implies a voluntary celibate.
He's a voluntary. Okay.
Well, we'll see because his viewers push back. Do you want to see him grappling with this?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, he got exposed big time. All right, Wilson, let's play the clip.
Did it once. I made my point. I proved my...
So he's talking about kissing a woman once.
So I did it once. I made my point. I proved my point, and now I'm good. Now I'm done. All right? Oh, yeah. Fake cell. Call me a fake cell all you want. I'm an incel, all right? I know I'm an incel. My hero falls. It was 9 years ago. Easy mode. Breaking news. Fakest of the fake cell. Wannabe incel. But like I said, I didn't choose to not want to be in a relationship. I didn't choose that, okay? I'm a misogynist, and I didn't choose that. I didn't choose to be born.
Okay, so he's really pushing the involuntary thing. Basically, he's saying his whole being is involuntary because he didn't choose to be born and he didn't choose to be a misogynist. So he's trying to make it seem like he's as much of a loser as possible. I've never really seen anyone kind of brag about how celibate they are.
And why? So what's his deal? I've never heard of him before this weekend. So what is his deal? Is he a troll? Is he trying to just rile people up, or is he trying to gain cachet through, I guess, the incel community? Like he thinks that that's a way to popularity.
It's. I'm glad you asked that because he's going to answer this right now. Ready for it?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've never touched a woman in my life. I'm stone cold to somebody.
He kissed a woman.
Yeah, well, I don't even want that. So
here he is declaring how little interest he has in a relationship or human touch.
I don't want touch. I don't want a relationship. You know what I want? Total Aryan victory. That's all I want. Wow. I didn't choose that. All I want is revenge against my enemies and a total Aryan victory. Hugs and kisses, touch, sappy stuff, hand-holding, please.
Okay.
All I want is revenge and an Aryan victory for my people.
All right,
that's enough of this guy.
Yeah.
So this guy is popular somehow. He has an audience.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Huge audience, but he gets kicked off a lot of platforms.
And somehow he had dinner with Donald Trump and Kanye West.
Yeah. Now, and Kanye West calls him a loyalist because he's still a Trump fan. So let's just look quickly at what Donald Trump said about this dinner. This past week, Kanye West called me to have dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Shortly thereafter, he unexpectedly showed up with 3 of his friends whom I knew nothing about. We had dinner on Tuesday evening with many members present on the back patio. The dinner was quick and uneventful. They then left for the airport. Okay, then what else did he say? So I help a seriously troubled man who just happens to be Black, who has been decimated in his business and virtually everything else, and who has always been good to me by allowing his request for a meeting at Mar-a-Lago alone so that I can give him very much needed advice. He shows up with 3 people, 2 of which I don't know, the other a political person who I haven't seen in years. I told him, don't run for office, a total waste of time. He can't win. Fake news went crazy. Next one. Is it Ye or Ye, Aaron?
Now it's Ye. Yeah.
Okay, now it's Ye. Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, was asking me for advice concerning some of his difficulties, in particular having to do with his business. We also discussed to a lesser extent politics, where I told him he should definitely not run for president. Any voters you may have should vote for Trump. Anyway, we got along great. He expressed no anti-Semitism, and I appreciated all the nice things he said about me on Tucker Carlson. Why wouldn't I agree to meet? Also, I didn't know Nick Fuentes. So the good news, guys, is he didn't say anything anti-Semitic at that alt-right dinner.
Well, very kind of admirable in some ways that Trump has such a lax open door policy where basically anybody can come over for dinner. Nobody gets vetted.
He's a true populist. Yeah.
Yeah. And just, very, very welcoming to the community. Anyone can just waltz in, even a incel white supremacist
or
blogger, fake cell or whatever he is.
Yeah.
I saw a headline somewhere, and I don't know if this is true, but that Kanye at this dinner asked Trump to be his VP.
He did. Yeah. Sorry. I kind of buried the lead. He did ask him. And I think he really offended Trump, because obviously Trump should be running for president, and maybe Kanye could be his VP. But, this is so sad, because Trump just tries to help someone who happens to be black.
That's Trump's word.
This is the pushback he gets. Yeah. To quote Trump. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually, if that's true that Kanye asked Trump to be his VP, that's probably what Trump is most angry about, not the whole incel white supremacist part. Yeah. But he's livid that Kanye would dare ask him to be his VP on the ticket.
Yeah. Second fiddle.
Yeah.
All right. So what do we got next? Oh, this is going to get people really happy. Dr. Fauci made an appearance on Meet the Press, and he's asked about the theory that COVID originated from a lab leak. Let's see what he has to say.
Yeah, everybody's always curious. Where is Fauci on the lab leak theory?
I have a completely open mind about that, despite people saying that I don't. I have a totally open mind about that. But if you look at the preponderance of evidence that has been accumulated by international group of highly respected evolutionary virologists, they feel, and they've written peer-reviewed papers on that, that the evidence strongly points to this being a natural occurrence of a jumping of a virus from a bat to an animal species to human. Hasn't been definitively proven, but the evidence on that is pretty strong. Having said that, we still all have to keep an open mind as to what the origin is.
Wow, open mind. All right, Aaron, you have interviewed none other than Jeff Sachs, who is part of a Lancet committee on COVID and on the lab leak. So what say ye?
I didn't fully understand what Jeff Sachs was saying, to be honest with you. But I do know that Jeff Sachs believes that it did start in a lab. I can say that. And he disagreed with other members of his commission. And this was a very, distinguished commission assembled by the Lancet, a premier medical journal. And Jeffrey Sachs, who I really respect a lot and has done done some great stuff. He's very convinced that this started in a lab. But I don't know. I it's not my forte. But the fact that Dr. Fauci I've never heard him say that before.
No.
And there was a time, and to be honest with you, I kind of fell into this, where if people would entertain the idea of a lab, it would just get dismissed as a conspiracy theory. But the fact that Dr. Fauci is even open to it speaks to how, like other things about COVID, what used to be denounced as conspiracy theories and nonsense is at least being considered to be plausible.
Right. So interesting, guys. We're going to have to stand by. And it takes a lot. We may have to cut this out of the stream because we may get demonetized just for showing this.
That is a possibility. It is a possibility. Yeah.
But if you see this and you are watching this again because you're that hardcore and you watch reruns of Monday Morning and it's not here, it's not because of censorship on our part. It's because of social media censorship, YouTube censorship.
Yeah. I think we'll be okay, but you never know.
You never know. Yeah. We may get suppressed, shadow banned.
Yeah.
All right. So stand by, everyone. Let's see what happens with that. All right. What do we got next?
Well,
speaking of the origins of COVID.
Yeah. So after Dr. Fauci said that, Meet the Press had a panel, and they had a guest who made a pretty interesting observation about U.S.
Yeah.
politics. His name is Matt Gorman, and
He's
he
a-
The
is
17 new
a Republican
members of
strategist.
Congress.
and he's a political consultant of some kind. Anyway, here he is.
Republican political consultant. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me show you the 17 new Republican members of Congress who represent districts that voted for Joe Biden. By the way, every one of these folks reside in a state that Joe Biden carried, except for Don Bacon.
Hold on,
We
you
want
can
to start this. We
at
want to start this
1, yeah.
later at 101.
One issue when it comes to oversight that will get folks on the Freedom Caucus, but also these folks in Biden states, will be the origins of COVID. And not making it personal, but being like, look, how do we prevent another global pandemic? And to your point about China, what are they covering up? You will never, ever, ever lose votes
Look at Dr.
by taking on
Fauci. He's
on
ready
China.
to have these.
Yes.
He's ready to have these same conversations.
Yeah.
I think you're not wrong on this. That is a more unifying place to start.
Absolutely.
Than someplace else.
So what he said was, in case you missed it, is he said that you will never lose votes for taking on China. And Chuck Todd very enthusiastically agrees with that. That's true.
Oh, yeah.
You will not lose votes in the U.S. for taking on China because both parties are united behind any kind of hawkish foreign policy act, pretty much. So taking on China and accusing China of being responsible for COVID, that will sell great in both parties.
Yeah. And the guy's just being honest.
Yeah, you won't lose votes taking on China.
Yeah.
You would lose votes for taking on Israel. In fact,
Oh, big time.
if you take on Israel, I mean, not if you're taking on Israel, if you're willing to recognize basic Palestinian human rights, or even suggest that you recognize basic Palestinian human rights, then AIPAC will spend millions of dollars to defeat
Right.
you. Like
Right.
if AIPAC even senses oh, this person might see Palestinians as equal
Human
to
beings.
Israeli
yeah.
Jews born in Brooklyn. Let's spend $10 million to make sure they don't even get to set foot in Congress. But
Right.
they've had some losses recently, like with Summer Lee in Pennsylvania, where they
So
lost
great.
that
You
one.
love to see it. Yeah.
You do love to see it.
Yeah. By the way, guys, I just to share, I got an award from the American Muslims for Palestine this weekend.
Oh,
Speaking of
congratulations.
Israel.
That's
Thank you.
cool.
Yeah.
What was the award?
An award for leadership.
Okay.
I'll let you know when they mail it to me. I was supposed to go. I couldn't go for logistics reasons, but I did address them over Zoom. So
well,
it
and
looked
that
like a
that
great
relates to
conference.
you taking a stand for Palestine when you insisted on writing a monologue calling out Israeli apartheid, and The Hill responded to that by firing you.
Right. Yes.
So that's great to see you getting recognized for
Thank you.
that, because that was very important, and it really showed it showed exactly what what this clip speaks to, that you will not lose points for criticizing China, but if you criticize Israel, you will get smeared and attacked and fired from jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. But you could get an award from American Muslims for Palestine. So there's that.
That's
That is
great.
a silver lining. Yeah. So
That's
I am
really
very
cool.
grateful to them, and I hope to go next year. All righty. So what do we got next?
All right. Well, Ukraine's been out of the Sunday news shows for the last few weeks because the midterms, and then, of course, the periodic gun massacres in the U.S., of which there's been a lot recently. But now there is, now Russia recently has been escalating its attacks and targeting civilian infrastructure, basically trying to make life miserable for Ukrainians in a bid to, force them into pressuring their government to accept Russian demands. And of course, we've talked about this before. All this was predicted a few months ago. There was that article in the New York Times which said that U.S. officials were baffled that Russia hasn't bombed civilian infrastructure yet after, nearly a year of war. But finally, Russia has done that.
Right.
And I think that results from not just a willingness to commit collective punishment by Russia, which is what this is. I think this is collective punishment, what Russia is doing. But also, I think this is a result of decisions taken by the Ukrainian far right and Washington, who have refused to accept any kind of accommodation with Russia and Russia-backed rebels in Ukraine. And so now we're in the situation where it's Ukrainian civilians who are getting pounded. And so this is a clip of CBS News reporting on this.
And one other thing I just
Ukraine
want to
has-
add is that another reason it was so irresponsible to present Putin as this Hitlerian figure is because it suggested that he was acting like Hitler and it couldn't get any worse.
Yeah, of course it can get worse, and this was predicted. And
Right.
but look, the official Ukrainian position has been no negotiations with Russia until they withdraw. But of course, that wasn't always their position. They were negotiating with Russia back in April and March. And what happened then? Well, we know from reports in the Ukrainian media and from Fiona Hill, the former White House expert, that there was an agreement reached between Ukraine and Russia. But according to sources close to Zelensky, the U.S. or the UK, probably acting at the behest of the U.S., told Zelensky, no, don't negotiate with Russia, and we're not going to back you up. So now we have more war, and now we have situations like this.
Ukraine has already proven it can withstand the Russians. But what about the winter? At the front line, the cold and relentless artillery. Maybe Russia's only hope to weaponize winter and freeze Ukraine's momentum.
Trenches like these become more and more commonplace the closer you get to the front line. And there's a really good reason for it. You don't just see and hear the flashes of artillery, but you can feel the thuds deep in your gut.
Ukrainians can also feel it right at their doorstep. Natalia Kristenko was coming home after drinking tea in Kherson. Medics, overwhelmed throughout a night of bombardment, didn't arrive until morning. Their city, only recently the scene of dancing after Russia's retreat, now limps through the dark and cold. Much like the capital Kyiv, the scene of a deadly missile attack this week. Ina and her son Artu have to shelter in a community tent.
We have no electricity and no water. Our phones and devices are out of battery. We do everything we can to distract Artur from what's really going on.
Kyiv's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, is fuming.
Right now, before the winter, the people, Putin and Russians want to let us be without electricity, without heating, without water. It's genocide. It's actually terrorism. The main goal of Russians to bring depression of society. I talk to the people, no negotiations with Russians. We, people is angry.
And
fun fact about Klitschko, who's now the mayor of Kiev. If you've seen that video clip of Victoria Nuland back in 2014, when she's speaking to the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Piet, in that leaked phone call about who they want to install as the next Ukrainian leader, they talk about Klitschko, and they say, but they dismiss him, and the reason they dismiss him is because he's too close to Europe, he's too close to Germany, and they don't want someone who's that close to Germany. They want someone they can basically control themselves. So they pick this guy Yatsenyuk. That's when Nuland says Yats is the guy.
Yeah.
But not Klitsch. She doesn't want Klitsch. Klitschko. She's like that's her nickname for him, Klitsch. And Yats indeed became the guy a few weeks later when there was an actual coup in Ukraine. And Yats, who Nuland picked, was the guy, and Klitschko was out. But he's since become the mayor of Kiev. And look, he says there are no negotiations with Russia. And it's his right to say that if you're invaded by a country, you have the right not to negotiate with your neighbors. But I look at it from the outside and I just think it's senseless for what? So because you don't want to accept that Russia has millions of people inside Ukraine that identify with Russia and want some limited autonomy in the east of Ukraine, and don't want Ukraine to be a part of NATO, for which polls have always shown there's a deep split in the country anyway. So it's like all the things that people in Ukraine don't want to negotiate on right now have historically, I think, had really been the cause of deep divisions. So it's like you're holding out for something that historically has not even been the position of the majority of the country, at least not consistently. So to me, it's senseless, but it's their right. It's their country. They're being attacked. But I do think, though, just because some Ukrainians don't want to negotiate, that doesn't mean that those who are arming them with billions of dollars worth of weapons are bound to take the same position. And the U.S. position has also basically been no negotiations. Although, as we've talked about, even though congressional progressives had to retract their call for negotiations, the top general in the U.S., General Mark Milley, he's called for negotiations because he realizes what this is doing to Ukraine. And also, he's realizing where this could be going, where the U.S. might have to get involved if Ukraine has any chance of victory. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want to fight Russia.
Right.
It's very sad.
Yeah, it is very sad. Sorry, there's not that much comedy. I just thought it was an important thing to watch.
No, there's no. And look, Russia is there's no denying Russia is escalating its attacks on civilian infrastructure, and they say all these targets have a military purpose as well. Which, even if that's true, it's obvious what Russia's doing. It is collective punishment. It's similar to what the U.S. does when it bombs a country. Except the difference is actually the U.S. does it first. When the U.S. bombs Iraq,
right?
First thing they do is take out the power plants, water treatment facilities, sanitation. It did take Russia a lot longer to do that, and so this is not just, I think, Russia's criminal responsibility. It also results from the hardline element of Ukraine and their allies in Washington, which is totally united behind no negotiations with Russia.
Right. So they also have blood on their hands because, as we know, if the United States wants something, they don't really respect the autonomy and of other nations, and sovereignty. Yeah. And we know they're trying to bleed Russia.
Yeah, and because the U.S. media will never report just the fact that there were talks between Ukraine and Russia in March and April. There was a tentative agreement reached, and there was, according to Ukrainian media, a sabotage effort from Boris Johnson. Then, the context of how all this could be avoided is just not on people's minds. People don't know about it,
right?
And that's what happens when you're living in a really sophisticated propaganda system where no one's telling these networks not to report that. They just know what to avoid and what to keep from their viewers.
Right. They could be telling them, but they don't even need to.
Yeah, they don't need to. No, because it's just, what you need to do to maintain your access and to maintain your credibility, quote unquote, which is basically just to toe the party line and don't challenge the narrative that we are helping Ukraine defend itself. And there's nothing else. This is not about bleeding Russia. There's no geopolitical interest here. Russia, there's no background. There's no coup in 2014. There's no 8-year war in Ukraine that kills 14,000 people. There's no history of the U.S. tearing up arms control treaties and expanding NATO. None of that. It's just, very cartoonish.
Okay. All right. What do we got next? Let's skip to clip 6. We got a great, Aaron's going to be very excited. Aaron loves this guy. Rep. Adam Schiff. He's talking to, he is appearing on CNN. And let's hear what he has to say.
The man who was trying to be speaker, Republican Kevin McCarthy, says that he wants to kick you off the Intelligence Committee, the committee that you now chair, because of your handling of the Trump-Russia investigation, and specifically that you repeatedly asserted that there was direct evidence of direct collusion, which didn't materialize. What's your response to McCarthy?
That's a great question. I would not. I don't think other anchors would ask that question of Adam Schiff because they're so also beholden to the narrative he pushed about collusion. So respect to Dana Bash. I love that question.
Yeah,
it's a great question.
Well, McCarthy apparently doesn't think it's collusion if your campaign manager is giving inside polling data and battle strategy in key states to an agent of Russian intelligence while the Russians are helping your campaign. But most Americans would call that collusion.
Okay. See, the problem is this takes like 5 minutes to debunk, but I'll try to just do it very quickly. Yeah. Everything it asserts there is false. So he's talking about this guy, Konstantin Kilimnik, who I've interviewed before, who is an aide to Paul Manafort, who is in fact a source of the U.S. embassy in Kiev. He translated for U.S. officials. He met with them regularly. They're emailing all the time. But after Russiagate happened, Russiagate fanatics had a problem where there was basically no Russians in Russiagate. So Kilimnik, who's actually born in Ukraine, but also has a Russian passport, he became very convenient. And there's been an effort to turn him into a Russian spy, even though there's been zero evidence presented for it. All the evidence in the public shows that he was a sensitive U.S. source. And all the evidence that they've tried to use to suggest he has some kind of Russian intelligence tie is a joke. And I've written about it extensively, and I don't have to go into it. But There's no evidence whatsoever that he's a Russian spy. No U.S. intelligence agency even calls him a Russian spy. That only came out in a Senate Intelligence Committee report that was controlled by Mark Warner, who was a hardcore Russiagator. So it's just everything he's saying here is false. And the theory of his case is that Paul Manafort gave Kilimnik this polling data, this private polling data, which then Russia used for its sophisticated brainwashing campaign against Americans with their Facebook ads that in reality weren't about the election, barely were on Facebook during the election, and nobody saw them because they were so clickbait and juvenile. So everything he's saying here is it's a conspiracy theory, and it's as nutty to me as QAnon. That's why I call it Blue Anon. But anyway, so that's Adam Schiff's smoking gun evidence for collusion that he claimed to have seen for years and years and years.
McCarthy's problem is not with what I've said about Russia. McCarthy's problem is he can't get to 218 without Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar and Matt Gaetz. And so he will do whatever they ask. And right now they're asking for me to be removed from my committees, and he's willing to do it. He's willing to do anything they ask. And that's the problem. Kevin McCarthy has no ideology. He has no core set of beliefs. It's very hard not only to get to 218 that way, it's even more difficult to keep 218. That's his problem. So he will misrepresent my record. He'll misrepresent Derek Swalwell or Ilhan Omar, whatever he needs to do to get the votes of the QAnon caucus within his conference.
He's not the only one. The incoming oversight.
You know, I do agree with Schiff, and it's hard for me to utter those words, but I do agree with him about
Aaron,
Ilhan.
I'm really impressed with you.
Yeah, when it comes to Ilhan Omar, he's right about that. They're going after her, and they're trying to remove her from, I think, the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And that obviously is purely political. There's nothing she's done that could possibly justify that. Adam Schiff, I have to say, I'm sorry. I do think he deserves to be removed from House Intelligence. That's a really important committee. He's totally abused his position by claiming that he had seen secret evidence of a Trump-Russia conspiracy. And he's also been the source. It's so obvious. Everybody in Washington knows this. Him and his staff were the source of so many disingenuous leaks trying to push Russiagate. Everyone knows that. So I do think he abused his position as the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. And I do think he doesn't deserve to be on there. Not that his counterparts do deserve to be on, but hey, I'm not going to deny that he's been reckless. But with Ilhan Omar, yes, I think that's an act of, that's both political in terms of they're trying to appeal to the, racist element of the Republican Party that just hates the fact that a Muslim woman of color is on that committee, and also to punish her for her views about Israel, where she's been very principled. Even though, of course, she's gone along with them when it comes to Ukraine. But anyway, that's another story. But yeah.
So Aaron, you just outed yourself as a McCarthyite.
When it comes to removing Adam Schiff, yes, I suppose I am.
I just wanted to call you a McCarthyite.
Yeah. I mean, he's such a liar, and I think he's caused so much damage. It also was his initiative to impeach Trump for freezing weapons sales to Ukraine while Giuliani was pressuring Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden. And that whole saga, as I tried to warn about at the time, really normalized this, neoconservative view that we needed to use Ukraine to, in Adam Schiff's words, fight Russia over there. I mean, that's when he said that.
Fight them over here.
Exactly. That's when he said that line I love quoting all the time, where he said that the United States aids Ukraine so that we can fight Russia over there. We don't have to fight Russia here. So that was during the impeachment. That totally normalized this idea that, oh, yeah, sure, let's have a proxy war with Russia and Ukraine. And 2 years later, Russia invaded to end that fight. And nobody did more to normalize the idea that that was a good thing to have that proxy war than Adam Schiff. So,
Maybe Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham did a lot, but in terms of did more to normalize it among liberals, I mean, nobody did more than Adam Schiff. Because with Russiagate right into Ukraine gate, and then the Russian bounties in Afghanistan, I mean, everything. Every deception has had a hand in at least promoting, if not generating. All right, well, let's hear more, because this is great. I'm really enjoying this clip.
Site chair James Comer told Punchbowl News in an interview, "I don't believe congressional investigations have a whole lot of credibility now. I blame Adam Schiff for that, but it's also both parties to blame for investigations in the past. I want to change that." What's your response?
Well, Comer doesn't believe in the Russia investigation. He doesn't believe in the Ukraine investigation. He doesn't believe in the investigation into January 6th. And
how could you not believe in the Russia investigation? The investigation into whether or not Donald J. Trump was a blackmail victim and conspirator of the Russian government. How could you dare question that? It's like, denying the existence of climate change, really.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's an asset personally.
Why? Because those were investigations of the serial abuse of power by Donald Trump and Comer and Jordan.
That's the thing. I'm sorry to keep talking about this guy, but he really gets me going. He says that his investigations, the Russian investigation, the Ukraine investigation, January 6th, were all investigations of what he calls the serial abuses of Trump, right? January 6th, yes, that was an investigation of Trump's serial abuse because Trump serially abused his office with that. But I'm sorry, investigating a conspiracy theory invented by Trump's political opponent, Hillary Clinton's campaign, is not holding Trump accountable. It's not investigating his serial abuses of power. It's in fact overlooking all of his actual serial abuses of power to wrap the country up in this insane Russiagate mania for more than 2 years and help lead to things such as the Ukraine war, as Adam Schiff has done. So he can't get away with thinking that he held Trump to account when really nobody did more to help Trump, I think, than this guy. Because what is a better gift for Trump as president than having your opponents wrapped up in a crazy conspiracy theory for more than 2 years and believing it's going to come true because of people like Adam Schiff.
Yeah, and suggesting that you're being picked on and et cetera.
Yeah. So sorry, buddy, you don't get to claim you don't get to claim you held Trump to account when you did more than anybody else, I'd say, in the Democratic Party to help him out.
We said
McCarthy will do nothing but carry Donald Trump's water. Someone, as you point out, who's sitting down for dinner with anti-Semites, who's sitting down for dinner with bigots, who won't condemn them.
Okay, I have another counterpoint. Who did Adam Schiff meet with recently? Not at dinner, but in the halls of Congress. The Azov Battalion.
Anti-Semitic.
The anti-Semitic neo-Nazi Azov Battalion, who previously were banned by U.S. Congress from receiving U.S. weapons. He welcomed them to a delegation of them to Congress recently. So he's not one to talk about meeting with anti-Semites. I'm sorry. He can't.
Yeah. I mean, he is one to talk about meeting with anti-Semites because he knows what it's like because he's done it.
Touche.
Yeah.
This is who they're making common cause with, and so they will do and they will say what they need to get along with Donald Trump.
Also, just a reminder that we highlighted this before, but it's very useful because he gets to pretend that in going after Schiff, McCarthy's being Marjorie Taylor Greene's bitch, basically.
Yes, they love to invoke Marjorie Taylor Greene because, well, I mean, it's fair enough. She's a good foil. She says some really
she's a psycho,
awful things, but I mean, that's a fair move. But yes, she's like their new. I mean, they're moving on just from focusing on Trump to also including people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I guess makes sense because people get frightened by her. Although, when I hear her talk about Ukraine, when I hear her talk about, I gotta say, I don't get frightened by her at all.
Your eyes light up.
They do.
Yeah. Right. But she is a Christian nationalist.
But yet she's also talking about the fact that we're arming Nazis in Ukraine.
Right.
So that's just, I hate to acknowledge that, but it's true. So yes, she's a Christian nationalist who also, unlike every Democratic member of Congress, is now concerned about arming neo-Nazis in Ukraine.
Right. Which is a condemnation of liberals and the left, the so-called left, more than it is credit for her. Yeah.
Absolutely. By the way, Adam Schiff, can we go back to Adam Schiff's face for a second?
Of course.
No,
I'm just saying, apparently he's a vegan. Apparently he's a vegan. Apparently.
Well, he looks like a turkey, so it would make sense that he'd avoid being a cannibal.
I mean, that's enough of his face. I'm just saying, is this a vegan? Is this your best spokesperson? Is this who you want representing you? If he is indeed a vegan, I don't know.
Guys, let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a vegan out there. We got any vegans in the house? Let us know. Are you comfortable with him representing you?
I would think not. I would think not. Okay. Well, are we going to the next clip?
Yeah, I think so. Have you had your full?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to hear more from Schiff's counterpart, Michael McCall, in a bit, right?
Oh
But
yeah, really good
but
stuff.
for now,
from
we
him.
can go to Donna Brazil talking about
Oh yeah, this
President
is great.
Biden's political future.
I want to turn to the other guy. President Biden said this weekend in Nantucket that he was really thinking about whether he would run or not. I think we have about 30 seconds here, Donna.
He's bought time to make up his mind, but at some point this weekend, Gavin Newsom pledged his support to Joe Biden. But I still believe it's an open question of whether or not he will decide to run. If he chooses to run,
He has said in the past, I'm going to run, I think.
Well, of
but
course,
now he's thinking about
it. We always say that before an election. The election is now over. Now he has to decide if he's ready for 2 more grueling years.
I love it. She's like, of course, we always say that before an election. We always lie before an election. But now he has to decide. Okay, let's see.
Now he has to decide if he's ready for 2 more grueling years of campaigning and governing at the same time.
And they will be grueling indeed. And
Absolutely.
You guys will be
2 more years of grueling campaigning. Remember how much how grueling his campaigning was in 2020 from his basement?
From his basement, that's right. Yeah.
Ridiculous. By the way, how are we doing on likes? I gotta ask. What do we got?
I'm seeing 692.
All right, guys.
Low numbers. Those are low numbers.
We're 1,600 of you are watching. Let's get to 800. We want at least half. Let's do it now.
743. Oh, everybody's moving quick now. All of a sudden, as if nobody knew before.
I know. What's the deal with that? No, we'll give them positive reinforcement. Thank you. This is great. What are we up to now?
And 800, 821.
Great. And keep them coming, guys, because remember, it's not just about liking us. It's also about disliking PodSave. So you're doing your part. All right. What do we got next?
Well, so Michael McCall, who was on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, he also was on with Martha Raddatz, and he, I mean, see, he's a good example of, those who talk about, like people like Chris Murphy says, if Republicans get into Congress, they're going to cut aid to Ukraine, and this will be so terrible. Michael McCall is a great example of how most Republicans in Congress are completely on board with the Ukraine proxy war. And in fact, their only criticism of Democrats is that they haven't been hawkish enough on Russia. So Michael McCall was on this week to talk about all this.
Oh, God, this is
now are 2 congressmen who will have a key role in providing aid to Ukraine in the future, likely leading the national security committees when Republicans take control of the House in January. Congressman Michael McCall of the Foreign Affairs Committee and Congressman Mike Turner of the Intelligence Committee, thank you both for being here. And I want to pick up where Colonel Milburn left off. He believes that there should be longer range weapons sent to Ukraine. Would you approve of that?
100%. He's absolutely correct. I mean, my criticism of this administration was before the invasion, we wouldn't put weapons in. And since the invasion, we've slow walked this process. First it was Stingers, then it was Javelins, then
help people understand that. Those are missiles that don't go as far as the ones you think would solve the problem.
So what the problem right now is the Iranian drones are going into Crimea, and the Ukrainians can't hit those Iranian drones unless they have the longer range artillery called the ATACMS. For some reason, I was with Secretary Austin at the Halifax National Security Forum. For some reason, they will not put those weapons into Ukraine. When we give them what they need, they win. And this could be it doesn't have to be
does it further incite Russia if they do?
Well, Crimea is not part of Russia under international law. So if it can hit into Crimea, I think that's fair game. And I think the problem is
So a few things. First of all, the Biden administration claims that Ukraine already does have weapons that can hit Crimea. Not that I think that's a good thing, but that's their argument. And what they don't want to do is give Ukraine weapons that can hit deep into Russia, because they feel as if that could escalate the war, and they're trying to avoid that. One of the few sensible decisions I think Biden's taken. But of course, for Republicans, that's soft. That's weak. You got to give them those weapons because they want Ukraine to be able to hit into Russia. And and basically escalate this thing and possibly draw in NATO, as some people in Ukraine tried to do recently when there was that air defense missile that hit Poland, and initially that was blamed on Russia by Ukrainian and U.S. officials before U.S. had to finally admit that actually no, that was actually Ukraine that misfired. But
Right.
so Michael McCall wants more incidents like that, basically.
Right.
That's what he's saying.
We need to be more aggressive, more irresponsible.
Yeah. And by the way, what he says about Crimea, it's under international law, it's not Russian. Yeah, I mean, the referendum there was not internationally supervised, and there are reasons to question the results. But what no one ever talks about when it comes to Crimea is, what do polls show about what the majority of the population there wants? And you read every single poll, including U.S. government-funded polls of Crimeans, and the majority wants to be a part of Russia because they identify with Russia, and they have for a long time. And we're not supposed to talk about that. We're supposed to just really think that Russia taking Crimea is the crime of the century and has to be resisted at all costs, including risking World War III. That's essentially the party line of both the Democratic and Republican establishment.
It's really so depressing. Yeah.
Yes, and it's fun. It's a funny window into what Republicans actually think, because the way, like, for partisan reasons, the way Republicans are presented in like liberal media is that they're all Putin appeasers and they want to help Russia win. When really this right here is the actual GOP.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And we're gonna look at some more of what they're saying. Because again, as you point out, they like to pretend that they're more conservative, not conservative politically, but more restraint, more anti-war. They like to position themselves as anti-war. And of course, what's pathetic is that the Dems are doing such a terrible job at being anti-war. But as we'll see shortly, as we've already seen, they want more weapons. That's their real
They don't want to be
complaint.
provocative, and we give them what they need. They win. If we don't, it's going to be a long, protracted war.
Yeah, no. If we give them more weapons, it's going to be an even more protracted war than it is already. Because look at how many weapons have been given to Ukraine, and that has protracted the war. There's no doubt about that. So he wants this war to go on for as long as possible, and that's the Republican Party. All right, there's more of Michael McCall.
Turn now to the next Congress. I know you, Congressman McCall, want to look at Afghanistan and the withdrawal. That was clearly a deeply flawed withdrawal. But what is it exactly that you want to do, and questions you want to ask about President Biden's role?
Well, I'd like to, the veterans deserve this first and foremost, Martha. You and I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan. The way it was done was such a disaster and such a disgrace to our veterans that served in Afghanistan. They deserve answers to the many questions we have. Why wasn't there a plan to evacuate? How did it go so wrong? Why can't I have access to the dissenting cable from the embassy, from the 32 or 23 employees out of the embassy that basically disagreed with the administration's policies? And they were lied to, remember? We're not going to fly off the top of the embassy like Saigon. This is not going to be a disaster. And this was the turning point. When Afghanistan fell, Putin looked at Ukraine, and we saw the Russian Federation troop buildup around Ukraine right at the same time, around August. Then she's looking at Taiwan, Ayatollah Kim Jong-un, against a free world and democracy.
All right, so guys, Putin invaded Ukraine because we pulled out of Afghanistan.
I think the opposite happened. I think the U.S. got humiliated in Afghanistan, and we're like, all right, we need to rebound somewhere. We need to look tough somewhere. Let's do that in Ukraine. And that's why when the Russian buildup began, not in August, I'm pretty sure it began a month or so later. It really escalated in November, not August. Anyway, regardless, when that began, then Russia offered diplomatic off-ramps. Like, they submitted this draft treaty to the U.S. and NATO in December. There also were talks between the Donbas rebels in Ukraine in January and February on implementing the Minsk Accords and ending the Donbas war. Basically, the U.S. balked and refused to have any kind of negotiations. I think that was, I'm guessing here, I think that was partly motivated by desire to look tough and strong after Afghanistan.
Right.
So I think
But of course he
I
has
think
to
he has it reversed.
has it backwards, yeah. But of course he has to make it seem like we're enabling enemies by withdrawing.
Yes. And look, again, there's an element here where you can blame Russiagate mania, because what delayed the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan was when some people in the CIA, aided by dupes in the media who did not challenge any of their claims and just parroted them, came up with this scam that there was Russian bounties on U.S. troops in Afghanistan. And the aim of that scam, it seems pretty apparent now, was to delay a withdrawal, because Trump had ordered a withdrawal from Afghanistan back in 2020. And so after the Russian bounties controversy erupted, which, again, looking back on it, was so stupid. You can see from the start how many holes there were, which all the media ignored pretty much.
Right.
But
Patriot, sorry, keep going. But that began.
Well, that then led to Liz Cheney and people like Jason Crow, a Democrat. They put out a measure in Congress basically blocking a U.S. troop withdrawal in Afghanistan, citing the Russian bounties thing. So that delayed it for a long time. And then Biden rushed and acted very quickly, and it did lead to this debacle.
I was going to say, I mean, it's hard for me to oppose withdrawing from Afghanistan when the patriot that is Liz Cheney. No, sorry, it's hard for me. No, yeah. When Liz Cheney was against it.
Absolutely. If Liz Cheney opposes it, it's probably a good idea.
It's hard for me not to oppose it. Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah. It's hard for me to be on the other side of Liz, basically, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And we have more Michael McCall, I think.
Yeah. One more.
And we know what Leader
through.
McCarthy has said about this. He's not going to write a blank check. And you have colleagues like Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, Thomas Macy of Kentucky, who are unlikely to support more aid. So are you really certain that Republicans will bring this to the floor?
Well, I think as Mike said, I think the majorities on both sides of the aisle support this effort. I think, everybody has a voice in Congress. And the fact is, we are going to provide more oversight, transparency, and accountability. We're not going to write a blank check. The last $40 billion package that passed, Martha, it was given to us the day of the vote. And members only had a matter of hours to go through all these pages of $40 billion supplemental.
Some of it's long-term aid, though. It's not just
It was long-term. And to be honest, a lot of this went to backfill our stockpiles. However, the Republicans are not going to rule like that. We have a voice now, and we're going to do this in an accountable way with transparency to the American people. These are American taxpayer dollars going in. Does that diminish our will to help the Ukrainian people fight? No, but we're going to do it in a responsible way. And I think it's very important that the American people understand what's at stake here. If we lose in Ukraine, Chairman Xi is going to look at Taiwan, and the Ayatollah is already all in with Russia and China in this fight. And Kim Jong-un now is providing artillery shells to Russia to fight the Ukrainians.
Again, it's so funny because his thing is like, we'll have more oversight and we need to fight more and send them more weapons, or else we let the enemies win.
More oversight and more weapons. Yeah. Sounds great. It's crazy. They've been using the same line for more than 60 years. It's just the domino theory on repeat. So Vietnam was, if we let the communists take over Vietnam, then China will fall and the region will fall. We'll lose Indonesia, on and on and on. And now it's the same thing. If we don't stop Russia and Ukraine, then China is going to invade Taiwan. It's just domino theory redux.
Yeah, and it's funny because Dwight D. Eisenhower was great on warning against the industrial complex, not so great on employing the domino theory.
That is very true. Yes, and of course, I mean, he spoke the truth as he was leaving office. I mean, yes, which is always what happens. On your way out, you can maybe be honest. Well, look, that is, to me, well, I don't want to repeat myself, but that's the Republican Party right there. Not the Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who have been voting against proxy war funding. That right there is the GOP.
Yes, but it is funny. Like it is very funny that he's like, more oversight to do what? To arm. More oversight, more arming. More oversight,
exactly.
more weapons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they know it's good to have to pay lip service to a non-interventionism, or not non-interventionism, because they're not even pretending that, but they're paying lip service to more responsible spending, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they have to also
they're not
pretend that
gonna
they're
do it.
holding. Yeah, they have to pretend that because they're the opposition party. They're holding
Right.
the ruling party to account, but really they do want to send more weapons and have less oversight.
Right. So ridiculous. All right, guys. Well, you know what? Don't be too sad. Sure, it's ending right now. Yes, this is over, but you know what happens next? Colin,
the world's hottest after party at
the
11
world's
a.m.
hottest
Eastern
after
time.
party at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And by the way, guys, please make sure that you subscribe to usefulidiots.substack.com. You get some great hot, spicy, hot takes, very heretical hot takes from Norman Finkelstein if you do that. You get our amazing Thursday Throwdown segments, which, as a present to you for Thanksgiving, I'm sure you're all very thankful, we released for free this week so people could get a sense of the great kind of stuff that they can access if they become Substack subscribers. So hope you enjoyed that over Thanksgiving.
I'm still mad about that Jon Stewart interview with Hillary Clinton. It's it ruined my weekend.
Yeah.
Just thinking about that thing. But which we reviewed in the Thursday Throwdown, and
yeah, for free for you guys.
we complained. We went in on that one.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. But it did well. People really liked it. People are sick and tired of that. And sick and tired of him getting praised for it.
Yes. You know what's funny is there are some YouTube shows, I'm not going to mention them, but they were like, Jon Stewart schools Hillary Clinton on the on like war and like destroys. Like no, he didn't. That was the most softball.
Yeah, it would have been nice if he had. Yeah.
Fawning interview, and like you can't, just because Jon Stewart was great on the Daily Show and has done some great things, you can't give him a pass for this one.
Right.
Come on.
He was a useful idiot for them.
Absolutely.
And we would know. We would know. We useful idiots would know. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, guys. So come on over and of course, like and subscribe to youtube.com/usefulidiots. And of course, please like and subscribe and rate and review our podcasts. That's another way we can help take over the world.
And usefulidiots.substack.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will see you next week.
Bye,
everyone.